April the 22nd, 1904 in New York, a couple named Julius Oppenheimer and Ella Friedman had their first child. They named him Robert Oppenheimer. No one knew what he would become when he was a baby, but everyone noticed one thing: this child was not ordinary, he was very different. He spoke early, started reading at a very young age, preferred talking to adults over playing with children, and he was intelligent. But at the same time, he was lonely. This loneliness stayed with him throughout his life. Actually, Oppenheimer grew up in a wealthy family. His father, Julius, had immigrated from Germany. He was also successful in the textile trade. His mother, Ella, was a painter. She loved art. No scientists were in the family, but Oppenheimer became curious about science. He built a mineral collection. He studied rocks. By the age of 12, he had advanced enough to give a talk at the New York Mineralogy Club. The adults at the club were shocked when they learned he was only 10 years old. Oppenheimer also had a passion for learning languages. He studied Latin and learned Greek. Later, he became interested in Sanskrit. His family always made sure he attended the best schools. He attended the prestigious Ethical Culture Society school, where he studied science, literature, and philosophy. He was an avid reader, but he struggled to listen to his friends. After finishing high school, he entered Harvard University. He wanted to study chemistry, but soon he began to develop an interest in physics. In the early 1920s, the world of physics was going through an exciting period. Quantum physics and mechanics were just being born. Albert Einstein had published his theory of relativity. No attempt was being made to understand the inner workings of the atom. Oppenheimer wanted to be at the center of this new physics. He finished Harvard in 3 years. His grade was summa cum laude, highest honors degree. Then he went to Europe, the heart of physics, the mind of physics, Cambridge and Göttingen. He worked with Thomson at Cambridge. Thomson was immersed in the discovery of the electron, but Oppenheimer was drawn to theoretical physics, not experimental physics. That's why he moved to Göttingen. There he worked with Max Born. Max Born was one of the founders of quantum mechanics. Oppenheimer did his doctorate under him. In 1927, at just 23 years old, he received his PhD. In the same year, together with Born, they published the Born-Oppenheimer approximation. This work is still used today to understand the motion of atoms within molecules. At just 23, Oppenheimer had already become a well-known figure in the world of physics. He was a small, quiet, bright child who collected stones and often spoke with adults. He was lonely, yet he was a genius. He worked with the best physicists in Europe. He caught their attention. No one at that time could have imagined that this quiet young man would one day become the head of the team that would build the world's most destructive weapon. For Oppenheimer, he simply loved physics, and physics was everything to him. In 1927, Oppenheimer had just received his doctorate. He was only 23 years old. He had a bright career ahead of him, but he had a problem. He didn't feel like he belonged anywhere. He had studied in Europe. He had worked with the best physicists in Europe. But he didn't want to return to America. He wasn't wanted to stay in Europe either. His mind was constantly in motion. So he stayed in Europe for a while longer. He worked in Zurich, Leiden, and other universities. He cared more about what he learned than where he was. The late 1920s were the golden age of physics. Werner Heisenberg had published the uncertainty principle. Erwin Schrödinger had discovered the wave equation. Paul Dirac, on the other hand, was combining quantum mechanics with relativity. Among these giants, Oppenheimer was a small but brilliant name. He worked with everyone. He learned something from everyone, but he struggled to carve out a path of his own. In 1929, he decided to return to America. The University of California, Berkeley, and the California Institute of Technology, Caltech, offered him a joint position. He would be going back and forth between the two universities. This was an unusual arrangement, but it also suited Oppenheimer's character. He didn't like boundaries. He thought outside the box. Oppenheimer established the Theoretical Physics School at Berkeley. Until then, America was quite far behind Europe. Quantum physics was being born in Europe. In America, however, classical physics was still being taught intermittently. Oppenheimer changed this balance. He taught his students the quantum physics he had learned in Europe. He challenged them and wanted them to push their limits. In a short time, Berkeley became one of the most important theoretical physics centers in America. Oppenheimer's contributions to science began during this period. He worked on cosmic rays, made predictions about neutrons and stars, and was one of those who predicted the existence of the positron. But his most important work was on quantum field theory. He was trying to understand the interaction between electrons and protons. These studies would later form the foundation of quantum electrodynamics. Unfortunately, Oppenheimer, he did not complete most of these studies. He would start an idea, take a few steps, move it forward, and then switch to another topic. He had a problem with focusing. Maybe he was interested in too many things. Physics, philosophy, poetry, religions, all of them fascinated him. His mind was constantly distracted, but at the same time, he could also think about a subject to its deepest point. Oppenheimer was loved by his students, but at the same time, he was also feared. He was very intelligent. He would not forgive mistakes. Sometimes he would spend hours trying to solve an equation on the board. If he couldn't solve it, he would throw the chalk and leave. Later, he would write a letter at midnight explaining the solution. Meanwhile, his personal life was complicated. He was depressed. At one point, there were even stories that he gave his friends a poisoned apple as a gift. During his student years at Cambridge, he went through serious depressions. He was intelligent, he was lonely, and the world, he still didn't know what he would become. January 1933, Germany. Adolf Hitler came to power. When Oppenheimer heard about this, he was also teaching at Berkeley. Most German physicists were Jewish. Suddenly, they were left unemployed. They were expelled from universities. Some committed suicide, some fled. They took refuge in America, England, and other places in other countries. Oppenheimer saw the suffering they endured. But what he was truly afraid of was something else. What if the Germans acted first? What if they built an atomic bomb? Back in 1938, at a laboratory in Berlin, German chemists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann discovered something completely unexpected. When they carefully bombarded a heavy uranium atom with slow-moving neutrons, the nucleus of the atom actually split in two. This phenomenon was called nuclear fission. The physics world was shocked because an enormous amount of energy was released during the split. This energy could be used to make a bomb. One of the first people to hear about the discovery was Niels Bohr. When Bohr came to America from a conference in Copenhagen, he told Einstein and other physicists about the news. Oppenheimer also received the news. He immediately grabbed paper and pen. He began doing the calculations. Within a few days, he showed that a uranium bomb was theoretically possible. No one yet knew how to make it, but now it was known to be possible. Nuclear fission works like this. A neutron strikes the nucleus of a heavy atom like uranium. The nucleus becomes unstable and splits into two smaller nuclei. During this split, a large amount of energy and several new neutrons are released. These neutrons then strike other uranium atoms. They also split. Thus, a chain reaction begins. If a sufficient amount of uranium is brought together, this is called critical mass. This reaction gets out of control and turns into an explosion. Oppenheimer and his colleagues were trying to calculate how quickly this chain reaction would occur. They were trying to estimate the amount of uranium needed to make a bomb. The initial calculations were incorrect. They found very large amounts, then the calculations were corrected. They saw that even smaller amounts could be useful. Still, whether the bomb could be built was still uncertain. Oppenheimer was no longer just an academic anymore. He was after the world's most dangerous weapon. But to him, this was a race. Nazi Germany was also after the same weapon. Sorted. Had Hitler won? If he did, it could mean the end of the world. Oppenheimer lived with this thought. He couldn't sleep at night. During the day, he made calculations. The shadow of war had fallen over him, and that shadow was growing larger. The year was 1942. The world was at war. In the Pacific, the Japanese were advancing. In Europe, the Germans were making progress. The American General Leslie Rose was assigned to build the atomic bomb. Rose was a civil engineer. He had also built the Pentagon. Now he was about to start an even bigger construction project. But for this, he needed the right person. He needed a leader. not just an ordinary general. He started looking for someone who could manage scientists, motivate them, and even intimidate them, and then he made his decision. Robert Oppenheimer. When General Groves chose Oppenheimer, everyone was shocked. Oppenheimer had no management experience. He had never led a major project before. Some of his friends were communists. His relatives were members of the Communist Party. The FBI was already tracking him. He was seen as a security risk. But Groves was determined. In his view, Oppenheimer was a genius. Other scientists respected him. And most importantly, he wanted the bomb. He really wanted it. Oppenheimer accepted the offer, but he had one condition. The place where the bomb would be built had to be a central facility. If the scientists worked scattered, things wouldn't work out. Everyone had to be in the same place. Everyone needed to focus on the same goal. Groves liked this idea. They started looking for a place together, a safe, remote place free from thieves. They finally made a decision. New Mexico, Los Alamos. Los Alamos is located somewhere in the mountains northwest of Santa Fe. It was previously used as a boarding school. The buildings were old and the roads were in poor condition. But the location was perfect. The surroundings were completely empty. Nobody ever came. No one would see. Groves immediately purchased the area. Construction began. In a short time, new buildings, laboratories, and workshops were added. The town was built. It had a post office, its own school, a local hospital, and even a cinema. Its residents had no address. Their families didn't even know where they were. Oppenheimer gathered the world's brightest top-tier physicists in remote Los Alamos: Enrico Fermi, Richard Feynman, Hans Bethe, Niels Bohr, Edward Teller. The list of legends went on and on. Each was a giant in their own field. When they all came together, it created an incredible intellect, an incredible force. But at the same time, it was also an incredible gathering of egos. Everyone differed. With every idea, they all wanted to go in a different direction. Oppenheimer's hardest job was to get these giants to move in the same direction. Los Alamos wasn't just a military base, it was a veritable prison. Those inside couldn't go out and those outside couldn't get in. Everyone's letters were being read, their phone calls were being tapped. Families were forced to lie. They told the neighbors that my husband worked in a factory. Children want to know what kind of work their father should do, and that he did. They didn't know. Oppenheimer, he was in charge of the printing. To everyone was growing up, he was interested in everyone. He was working day and night, but his body was also getting weaker. But it didn't stop, because time was running out. He didn't know how far the Germans had advanced. But he has to finish it before them, that it is necessary. He knew at Los Alamos, everyone. He was asking the same question. Will this bomb really work? Theoretically, it was possible. The calculations were correct. But there was a gulf between theory and practice. No one had ever created an explosion by splitting the atom before. No one had managed to control the critical mass. Oppenheimer's team was walking into the unknown. With every step, a new problem arose. Every problem meant a new delay, and time was working against him. Different materials could be used for the bomb. Uranium-235 and plutonium-239, uranium-235. It was found in nature. Two different materials could be used for the bomb. Uranium-235 and plutonium-239. Uranium-235 was found in nature, but it was very scarce. Only 0.7% of natural uranium was uranium-235. The rest was uranium-238. It was useless for making a bomb. Separating the two from each other was also incredibly difficult. Massive facilities were built. Uranium enrichment plants were established in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Thousands of people worked there. Even so, it took months. Plutonium, on the other hand, was not found in nature. It was produced by bombarding uranium-238 with neutrons. Nuclear reactors were built at the Hanford facility in Washington. In these reactors, uranium was converted into plutonium. Plutonium could be separated from uranium chemically. This was even easier. But plutonium had a problem of its own. It was very unstable. It detonated earlier than uranium-235. This forced a change in the bomb's design. The uranium bomb was relatively simple. Two pieces of uranium-235. They were placed at both ends of a tube. Thanks to explosives, these two pieces were shot towards each other. When they combined, they reached critical mass. A chain reaction would begin, an explosion would occur. This design was called the gun-type design. It worked like a small gun. The plutonium bomb, however, was different. When plutonium reached critical mass, it wouldn't explode immediately, but it needed to detonate all at once. Oppenheimer proposed the implosion design to solve this problem. Explosives were placed around a spherical plutonium core. When detonated simultaneously, they created immense pressure on the plutonium core. This pressure compressed the plutonium, allowing it to reach critical mass, but the explosives had to be fired at exactly the same time with microsecond precision. With the technology of that era, this was almost impossible. Oppenheimer struggled with these problems every day. It rained, the roads deteriorated, materials were delayed, and the scientists argued. Everyone was exhausted. Everyone was irritable. But no one gave up, because they didn't know what the Germans were doing. Maybe they were dealing with the same problems too. Maybe in a week the bomb would be in the hands of the enemy. This thought kept everyone going. Building the bomb was not just an engineering problem, it was a matter of life and death. It is July 16, 1945, in the early morning at 5:30 a.m. Here in the New Mexico desert, the air is very cold, there is no wind, and the sky is clear. 340 kilometers from Los Alamos, a region in the south called Jornada del Muerto. The meaning of this name is Journey of the Dead. Spanish explorers had named this desert. That morning, 42 people were waiting in the desert. Oppenheimer was among them. He had put on his glasses and was looking down at the ground. No one was speaking. A profound silence and then a flash of light. The Trinity test was the world's first nuclear explosion. The bomb was called Gadget. It was a plutonium bomb. It was built with an implosion design. It had been placed on a 100-meter steel tower. A shelter had been built 9 kilometers away from the tower. Oppenheimer and other prominent scientists were in this shelter. Farther away, 30 kilometers away, General Groves and other soldiers and military officials were waiting. There was no guarantee that the test would be successful. The calculations were correct. But what if the calculations were wrong? What if the explosion was bigger than expected? What if it ignited the atmosphere? That was the problem. Some physicists remained worried. Was it theoretically possible for the nuclear reaction to burn up and destroy the entire atmosphere? The calculation said no, but no one could say anything for certain. Preparations before the test took months. The bomb was assembled piece by piece on the tower. Final checks were carried out. The explosives were put in place. The plutonium core was carefully set into position. The countdown began. As the hours passed, the weather turned bad. The wind picked up. It looked like it was going to rain. If the wind changed direction, radioactive fallout could reach populated areas. The test could have been postponed, but towards midnight, the weather cleared, the wind died down. The sky cleared up. The time was 5:29 a.m., the final minute of the countdown. Everyone took cover. They closed their eyes. They put their arms over their heads. There was tension in the air. Some were praying. Some didn't know what to do. We are down to the final 10 seconds. The final 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. First came the light, an indescribable light, brighter than daylight, brighter than the sun. The desert turned to day in an instant. Then came the heat wave. Grains of sand hundreds of meters away turned into glass. Then came the sound, a rumble, an explosion, the loudest sound ever heard. Then the mushroom cloud rose. It reached a height of 12 kilometers. Oppenheimer stepped out of the shelter. He was silent for a moment. His friends looked at him. Then Oppenheimer spoke the words that came to his mind. I have become death. the destroyer of worlds. These words came from the Hindu sacred text, the Bhagavad Gita. Oppenheimer had studied Sanskrit. At that moment, this was the only thing that came to his mind. Not love, not victory, not pride. Only death, just 21 days after the Trinity test. On the morning of August 6, 1945, at exactly 8:15 a.m., over the Japanese city of Hiroshima, the sky is perfectly clear, people are heading to work, and children are running to school. Suddenly, the B-29 bomber, known as the Enola Gay, appears high over the city. It drops its bomb, the bomb called Little Boy. In 43 seconds, it reaches an altitude of 580 meters. It explodes. 70,000 people die instantly. By the end of the year, the death toll reaches 140,000. Oppenheimer hears about the explosion on the radio. Is he happy? Is he afraid? Is he regretful? No one knows for sure. But from that moment on, something changes. A worm of doubt begins to gnaw at him. 3 days after Hiroshima, August 9th, 1945, the second bomb, Fat Man, is dropped on Nagasaki. The plutonium bomb has a design similar to the one in Trinity. 40,000 people die instantly. By the end of the year, the death toll is 70,000. The total number of civilian deaths from both bombs exceeds 200,000. Most of them are women, children, and the elderly. Japan surrenders on August 15th. The World War ends. But a new era begins. The atomic age. Oppenheimer knew in advance that the bombs would be dropped. He even served as a consultant in the selection of targets. Kyoto was removed from the list because of its cultural significance. Hiroshima was chosen because it contained military targets. Nagasaki, on the other hand, was a backup target. Did Oppenheimer agree with these decisions? Was he involved? Historians are still debating this. But there is one fact. He made those bombs. His team made them. They were made under his leadership. Little Boy was a uranium bomb. It had a gun-type design. There was almost no chance it wouldn't work. That's why it was used without being tested. It contained 64 kilograms of uranium-235. Only 1 kilogram of that underwent nuclear reaction. The energy released was equivalent to 15 kilotons of TNT, or the explosion of 15,000 tons of dynamite. Fat Man, on the other hand, was a plutonium bomb. It had an implosion-type design. Trinity had been tested as well. It contained 6.2 kilograms of plutonium. Only 1 kilogram of that underwent reaction. The energy released was 21 kilotons of TNT. Fat Man was more powerful. But because its target area was narrower, the destruction in Nagasaki was less than in Hiroshima. Still, both cities were wiped off the map. After the bombs were dropped, Oppenheimer's behavior changed. He became quieter. He grew more absent-minded. One day, he met with President Truman at the White House. Oppenheimer clasped his hands together, and he said, "Mr. President, I have blood on my hands." Truman became angry. Later, he told his aides, "I never want to see that crying scientist again." Oppenheimer had built the bomb, but he was not the one who dropped it. Still, he was taking the blame, because guilt was eating away at him from the inside. And this feeling never left him for the rest of his life. The war was over. But for Oppenheimer, the war was not over. His enemies were no longer the Germans or the Japanese. His new enemy was his own invention, the atomic bomb. He wanted to stop it. He wanted to prevent its spread, but it was too late. The bomb was already there. The Soviets would soon build it as well. And the American government wanted an even bigger bomb, the hydrogen bomb. Oppenheimer opposed this, and this opposition led to his downfall. Right after the war, Oppenheimer became famous. He appeared on the cover of Palm magazine. He was portrayed as a hero, but he was uncomfortable with that heroism. He began giving public speeches. "We built the atomic bomb, but this is only the beginning. Even bigger ones will come. We must stop this." He proposed that nuclear weapons be brought under international control. He also spoke at the United Nations. He organized scientists. But the government did not listen to him. The Cold War had begun. The Soviets detonated their own bomb in 1949. The race started again. When the Soviets detonated the atomic bomb in 1949, American officials panicked. Edward Teller and some other physicists advocated for the creation of the hydrogen bomb. The hydrogen bomb would be hundreds of times more powerful than the atomic bomb. Otto Leimer strongly opposed this. There was no limit to a thermonuclear bomb. He said it could kill millions of people and that we should not do this. The hydrogen bomb operates on the principle of fusion. The atomic bomb works by fission, splitting the atom. The hydrogen bomb works by fusion, combining atoms. The energy of the sun also comes from fusion. For a hydrogen bomb to detonate, first an atomic bomb must explode. It needs to explode first. The atomic bomb creates immense heat and pressure. This heat and pressure fuse the hydrogen isotopes together. The resulting energy is hundreds of times greater than that of an atomic bomb. Oppenheimer knew that this bomb was theoretically possible, but he was against its creation. According to him, this bomb had no military purpose. It was designed not to destroy things, but to destroy countries. Once it was made, it could not be stopped. The Soviets would make it too, and then both sides would have weapons capable of destroying each other. This was called deterrence. But Oppenheimer did not believe in this. Oppenheimer's opposition caused him to fall out of favor with the government. His FBI file grew thicker. He was interrogated because of his former communist friends. His phones were tapped, his letters were read. He was no longer a hero. He was a suspect. The powerful men in Washington wanted to get rid of him. Oppenheimer felt this pressure, but he did not back down. He had built the bomb. Now he was trying to stop it. Was this hypocrisy, or was it courage? History leaves this question unanswered. But one thing is certain. Oppenheimer was left alone with his conscience. And for him, that was harder than the war. The year is 1953, the coldest days of the Cold War. A senator named Joseph McCarthy had started a communist witch hunt in America. Thousands of innocent people lost their jobs. They were imprisoned, slandered. Oppenheimer was waiting his turn. He had former communist friends. He had opposed the hydrogen bomb. And most importantly, he was no longer useful. The war was over. He was no longer needed. Those in power wanted to quietly get rid of him. December 1953. Oppenheimer received a letter. The letter was from the Atomic Energy Commission. It stated that Oppenheimer's security clearance had been suspended. The reason: there are elements in your personal and political background that pose a security risk. There was no concrete evidence. There was only suspicion. His old friends were communists. His brother was a communist. His wife had once been a member of the Communist Party. But Oppenheimer himself had never been a communist. Still, that was enough. Oppenheimer requested a hearing. He wanted to defend himself. In April 1954, a hearing began behind closed doors. The prosecutors scrutinized every detail of Oppenheimer's past. This months-long interrogation, during which his former friends questioned him, delved into his private life, and read his old letters, left Oppenheimer exhausted. Finally, in June, the verdict was announced. His security clearance was revoked. Oppenheimer was now officially considered a security risk. After the hearing, Oppenheimer's reputation was shattered. He continued his position at the university, but he could not work in any government-related job. He could not serve as a consultant or write reports. He was forced to sit quietly. His friends in the scientific community were divided. Some defended him, while others distanced themselves from him. Edward Teller testified against Oppenheimer at the hearing. This ended their friendship forever, brought it to an end. During this period, Oppenheimer completely withdrew into himself. He smoked. He smoked a lot. His health deteriorated. In the 1960s, a tumor was found in his throat. He underwent surgery, but the cancer had spread. On February 18, 1960, he died at the age of 62 in his home in Princeton. The cause of death was throat cancer. It was the result of years of heavy smoking. Few people attended his funeral. He was cremated according to his will. His ashes were scattered in the Caribbean. He no longer had a grave or a monument. By the time he died, the world had already forgotten him. He was now remembered by only a single sentence: "I have become death, the destroyer of worlds." But that sentence was only a part of his story. He was a genius. He was a leader. He was a hero. At the same time, he was an executioner. He was a man wrestling with his conscience. He was a scientist afraid of what he had done. Today, nuclear weapons still exist. There are more than 12,000 nuclear warheads in the world. Each of them is a part of Oppenheimer's legacy. He changed the world, but the world also changed him. Maybe that's the real story. No matter how great a person is, they are never greater than what they create. Thank you for watching me. See you in our next documentaries. Take good care of yourself.